Hey guys, Brook Potter here. In this video, I'm continuing my series about why I think that rapture theology is probably the weakest, least supported interpretation in Scripture on the subject of end times. Now, before I get into the scriptures that I want to look at in this video, I just want to make a couple of points. Firstly, a lot of my friends have asked me, Brooke, why are you bothering with the end times? God is love, God is grace, we have the new covenant. We don't really know how this whole thing's going to pan out. Why don't we just leave it aside and just trust God? And that's perfectly fine, and some of my friends have actually decided to do that. However, there are some Christians who just cannot simply just brush aside books like the book of Revelation and the writings in Matthew and Luke and Mark and just say, well, God is love, we're not going to bother to deal with all these things. While some people can do that and they're completely within their right to do so, some of us actually have to try and put some kind of explanation to these verses, and it just wouldn't sit easy with us just to leave those verses unexplained. To my second point, because of an unhealthy understanding about end times, many believers have just resorted to living their life on pause. I mean, if Jesus Christ is going to return at any minute and crack open the heavens and put an end to this story about humanity, what's the point in getting involved in anything? Why bother to go to school or get involved in social injustice to try and right the wrongs of society? Many believers have taken this position and end up just sitting back and waiting for this whole thing to finish, and they usually end up making short-term choices about their life because they don't actually expect that they have a future. Needless to say, with those kinds of choices, they end up in a lot of problems when they end up in the very future that they didn't think that they had. To my final point, a healthy understanding of end times will help us understand much of what's going on in the ministry of Jesus and the writings throughout the New Testament. It will help us understand the true nature and character of the Father. Is he one such as expressed in the self-sacrificing act of Jesus Christ on the cross, where when we were at our worst, God gave us his best? Or, as in the book of Revelation might suggest, is the true reflection of God some kind of Rambo-style bloodlust vendetta that he's returning to wipe out all his enemies upon the earth? Having these verses explained in their proper context with the correct understanding of end times will help us better understand the nature of the God that we serve. With that said, I'd now like to take a look at Matthew 24 verses 40 and 41. Which some of my viewers have emailed me as convincing evidence that there must be a rapture. And in these verses, it talks about how two would be in a field and one will be taken, one will be left. And in verse 41, where it says that two women will be at a mill, one will be taken and one will be left. On a surface reading of these verses, we might easily conclude that this is talking about some kind of rapture. However, when we read the subsequent story that Jesus gives to give light to these passages, we see that it's actually advocating the reverse. Jesus talks about a servant that believes the master isn't coming anytime soon. He begins to abuse the other servants of the house and starts eating and drinking with the drunkards. And when the Lord returns at a time he doesn't expect, the Lord actually cuts down this wicked servant and gives him a portion amongst the hypocrites. We see in that story that it is not the righteous that are taken away and the wicked remaining. It is in fact the wicked that is taken away, and it is the righteous that remain. We can better understand the meaning of these verses when we read the parallel account given in the book of Luke chapter 17. Now just take a look at some of the parallel accounts that Jesus gives leading into these verses to help better frame what it is these verses are talking about. In the book of Luke chapter 17 verses 26 and 27, we're first given the parallel with the story of Noah and how men were eating and drinking and giving into marriage until Noah entered the ark and the flood came and destroyed them all. And again, in this parallel, it is the wicked that are destroyed, it is the righteous that remain. The second parallel that Jesus uses leading into these verses is the story of Sodom and Gomorrah with righteous Lot. And just as Lot was commanded to flee from the city as the Lord came to rain down fire and brimstone upon it, in the same way, this is the parallel being used to describe the coming of the Son of Man. And again, it should be noted that righteous Lot and his family, save his wife, were actually spared, and they were the ones that remained, while the city of Sodom and Gomorrah were completely destroyed by the Lord. Finally, in Luke chapter 17, verses 34 to 37, we get the parallel account of these verses as recorded from the book of Matthew, where two men are in a bed and one is taken, one is left. Two women are grinding at a mill, one is taken, one is left. And two men are in a field, one is taken and one is left. So it's a parallel account, with one exception. In verse 37, the disciples ask Jesus, where are these people that are taken? Where do they go? And Jesus' response to them is very telling. He says, wherever you see their dead bodies, there you will see the vultures gathered. Again, reiterating that it is not the righteous that are taken in these verses. Again, it is the unrighteous that are taken. So again, these verses, hardly from teaching any kind of rapture theology, seem to be more in line with national judgment, where God is coming to judge the wicked, and the consequence of this judgment is physical death. There's nothing in these verses to suggest anybody is taken up to heaven or anything along those lines. So again, guys, I hope you got something out of this video. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you'd like to see more. I'd like to thank you again for watching, and God bless you. I hope to see you all very soon. Bye-bye.